Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome to another edition of All Indiana Politics. I'm Phil Sanchez. We're now less than 2 days away from the primary. Secretary of State Diego Morales says he's launching a new effort to keep the polls safe. He sat down with our government reporter, Garrett Berquist.
And joining us now is Secretary of State Diego Morales. Mr. Secretary, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Garrett. Thank you for the opportunity. It's good to be back.
So tell me about the preparations your office is making for the primary on Tuesday.
We're actually been busy registering eligible Hoosiers. We've been outside the Lucas Oil Stadium chasing folks with an iPad saying, are you registered to vote? We've been at festivals. We've been at fairs. In fact, we are going to be the proud sponsors of the Great Indiana State Fair this year again. But in preparation for this Tuesday, May primary, we've been out there asking folks to please help us increase voter turnout and voter participation, because that's one of my goals. One of my goals is to increase voter turnout, voter participation, and we've been doing that. You know, I was walking the St. Patrick's Day parade just a few weeks back, and from the parade, I was asking folks on the route of the parade, are you registered to vote? And then, no, I'm not. Well, go to indianavoters.com. You can register there. It takes less than 2 minutes. We have a text, that we've been using. For example, if you're trying to figure out where is your polling location or any questions, you can just text us as well. So we've been preparing for this. We have materials, we have books. We've been working with our county clerks. In addition to that, I've been visiting with county sheriffs, county prosecutors, local elected officials, because when it comes to elections, it affects us all, so we need to be ready.
What kind of early turnout voting numbers are we seeing?
Well, it's up from previous years, but it all depends on Tuesday, because, a few people, some people are waiting to go on Tuesday to vote, and it will all determine on Tuesday, and then obviously we will know and we will have final numbers after Election Day.
The Brennan Center for Justice just released a new poll which shows that 38% of local election officials say that they have received threats or harassment or abuse. What is your office doing to protect them? I'm
proud to tell you that this session we worked very closely with the Indiana Clerks Association to pass Senate Bill 170, which will provide protection to our election officials, to our poll workers. In fact, I have some materials with me that I can show you that we actually sharing this not only with county clerks, but also with county prosecutors, sheriffs. We call it blow the whistle. If they see something, if they see any threats. Another threat that we're experiencing, well, I shouldn't say that we're seeing, Garrett, another threat that we've been seeing is our county clerks, they get a lot of mail in their office, and you never know what's, inside those envelopes. So what I've been doing this year, again, while you're crisscrossing all 92 counties within 3 months, I've been hand delivering, doses of Narcan to these county clerks. Because for me, the most important thing is the safety of our county clerks, our poll workers, and our election officials. There is no price tag for the safety of our election officials. So I've been going, we'll be taking them, brochures and manuals, how to apply this. My hope is that they will never use that. What should voters do if they see something that they think isn't safe or else they believe violates election laws? To text IN 45995, a simple text, or to go to indianavoters.com, or they can call our office in the Secretary of State's office. For example, this Tuesday, it's a holiday for state government. My team and I, my communications team, my outreach team, and my election team, we will be out there. Most likely I'm gonna leave home around 4 a.m. We will be way before 6 a.m. already supervising, talking to our county clerks, making sure that the polls are open, and we will be working all day, all across the state, visiting as many polling locations, making sure that they have the tools that they need. But at the same time, we will be, working with Homeland Security. We will be working with other organizations to make sure that we are ready and prepared, because for me the most important thing is that when the polls open at 6 a.m. and they close at 6 p.m., we will run smooth elections, and that every single Hoosier here in Indiana will have the opportunity to vote this Tuesday.
If voters cast a provisional ballot because they don't have a photo ID, how can they be sure that their vote will be counted?
Well, as you know, we have this law here in Indiana that you must show your ID, but there are so many other ways as well. You know, obviously, people have a passport, people have their military ID, people, you know, we're issuing free IDs here. We still have time. If any of our fellow Hoosiers is planning on going to vote on Tuesday, and if yet they don't have an ID, I encourage them to go to the BNB and to get a free ID. So we will be happy to assist in that regard as well. But if they come saying, oh, I forgot my ID, right, on election day, we will get a provisional ballot, and we will make sure that, you know, we will take the appropriate process to make sure that their vote was counted.
We have a number of county offices on the ballot as well. Why is it important to make sure you fill out your ballot entirely?
So let me take the opportunity to say this, that so for some folks, sometimes they like to go to vote in the general election. I'm here to encourage my fellow Hoosiers, please come out and vote this primary. Primary elections is as important as general for the reasons that you said, because this primary, we will be electing who will be the governor's nominee from both sides of the aisle, to the Senate, down to the local level. So it is an important election, and we should not be taking for granted the right to vote.
All right, coming up, Indiana's best political team takes stock of the historic protests rocking college campuses, including here in Indiana. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics, as we welcome in two members of Indiana's best political team, Democrat Laura Beck and Mario Maslamani. Let's talk about the pro-Palestinian protest on college campuses across the country, including here in Indiana. Laura, we'll start with you. How would you rate how universities have responded, particularly IU Bloomington?
You know, that's a really loaded question to ask me, Phil, and I appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to Mario's rating as well. I'm not an IU alum, so I do at least have that. Look, I think at IU particularly, there's a lot of layers to unpack. The New York Times had a really interesting story about IU and all of the various pieces that have been at play leading up to this moment. I do believe that we are a country that is based on free speech, not conservative speech, not liberal speech, but we are a country of free speech. However, when you cross the line, you break laws, you have to be held accountable for that, and you should be held accountable. At IU in particularly, again, lots of pieces in play, but it's been my experience over the years that when you send police in and snipers and folks in riot gear, that tends to bring about a reaction that maybe you weren't anticipating. But at the same time, we have to be really mindful of the safety of our Jewish students on campus, and that there is absolutely no place for hate speech. So not going to give a rating to IU. I think what we've seen in the news particularly and what we've seen unfolding on social media probably speaks for itself.
Mario, I'll let you answer that one as well, but also there's been some polling that suggests that young Republicans also are less supportive of Israel than older generations. Does this spell maybe some political trouble for Republicans?
I think this is a loaded issue for both Republicans and Democrats. So, you know, the Hamilton County Republican Party was there when the Muslim community celebrated Eid, and the Democrat Party was there too. And the Muslim community was expressing frustrations not only to Republicans, but also to Democrats. And I think that this is one of those things that, you know, there's a lot of people that are very frustrated, very hurt. And there's a lot of tension, not just in the Middle East, but also here in this country. I see where the Jewish people are hurting, and I see where the Muslim people are hurting. And to Laura's point, I think Republicans and Democrats agree in the freedom of speech. and people to be able to convey their message. But when you're chasing and you're making a Jewish student fear for their life as they're trying to do is go to class, that's wrong, right?
No doubt.
And you're taking away from your own message by destroying buildings and by being violent and being physical. When you're talking about, from the river to the sea, that's basically calling for the genocide of the Jewish people, and that's just disgusting. And so we understand your point, make your point, protest in peace, and you'll have a better chance of having people listen to your viewpoint than when you're using violence as a way of trying to express your opinion.
Laura, how has the Biden administration handled it, in your opinion?
Well, I think the Biden administration is doing the best that the Biden administration can do. But I want to just build on Mario's point here, and I think this is really important to make. When you think about Gen Z in that age cohort and the way they consume news, they aren't watching traditional news. They're not reading the newspaper. They're getting their news from Instagram, and 65% are getting their news from TikTok. And much of what they are being served on TikTok, a predominant amount of that information is pro-Palestinian. And so it could be a case of the tail wagging the dog. It could be a case of the dog wagging the tail. But I think we also have to do a deeper dive into how these kids, and not kids, young people, young adults, are getting information. And China loves to sow chaos. And is some of that what's happening here too?
Hey, lots to talk about. When we come back, we'll look ahead at the primary on Tuesday. Stick with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics. Still with us, Republican Mario Masalamani and Democrat Laura Beck. Primary day is almost here. Mario, we'll start with you. The big one, of course, the Republican primary for governor. From what you've seen, what issue is most likely to influence Republican voters' decision?
To be honest with you, Phil, I am concerned for this Republican primary. Voter turnout's been low. Early voting, absentee ballot application voting has been atrocious. It's about 4.5%. So I'm not sure what is the major issue for the Republican primary, because it seems that nothing is getting these people to come out and vote. And, I'm telling your audience, if there's a low turnout, anything can happen. Right now, the front runner is Mike Braun, but there's other people that are fairly close. There's a large group of people that are undecided. If there is a low voter turnout, then anything can happen in a race like this. And I'm curious to see how Tuesday unfolds, because with a low turnout like this, it's anyone's game.
Yeah. Laura, you're the communications expert on this panel in terms of efficacy as reaching Republican voters. How would you evaluate the messaging that we've seen from the candidates in this campaign?
Well, I mean, I think in any kind of primary election, you have to speak to your primary voters. And I would say a lot of Indiana's Republican primary voters are Trump voters. They're MAGA Republicans, and they're going to be the base that are going to come out and vote. And that's where you saw, whether we agree with that messaging or not, that's why the messaging has been the way the messaging has been. One of the questions is that messaging maybe not hitting the folks that they want to hit, frankly, and that could be leading to the low turnout. But Republicans, I think, traditionally come out and vote on Election Day, whereas Democrats tend to be much more early vote focused. So we'll probably see a little bit more on Election Day. But Mario's got a great point. If you're at 4% right now, it's really anyone's game.
Yeah, pretty low. This next question for both of you: what trends should we watch out for on Tuesday night? And where are some of the areas that could make or break each of the Republican candidates, Mario?
I think one of the big trends is it appears that we have a lot of women that are voting in disproportionate numbers. It looks right now at 56% female, 44% male. That could potentially help Suzanne Crouch with a larger female voter turnout. But unlike Democrat elections, Republican elections, it doesn't seem like that correlates as much with women voting for women compared to who the best candidate is. And to Laura's point, one of the main things is you need to get your voters to vote for, give them a reason why to vote for you, as to why not to vote for the other person. When there's 5 or 6 people in a race, attacking the other person, trying to bring their poll numbers down, doesn't correlate to getting votes for you. So in the last week of the election, the main thing I think is trying to have a positive message and relay a message where, hey, this is the reason you need to come out on Tuesday and vote for me.
Laura, I'll let you respond quickly, and then I want to move on.
Well, I think one of the challenges here is that so many of these candidates have been running a national campaign, and maybe some of this is reflective of people aren't interested in the national issues. They're really interested in local issues. And I think if there's anybody who really stands right now to break out, that's Suzanne Crouch, because she's just got such strong ties, especially to not just some of the more urban areas, but really to the more rural and smaller communities because of her role as lieutenant governor. Wow. So that's going to be one I'm definitely going to be watching is how she does on Tuesday night.
Well, let's turn to the other races now, okay? Jim Banks unopposed in the Senate primary, but Democrats can choose between Mark Carmichael and Valerie McRae. Laura, how do you assess each of their strengths, and what will each need to do to win over Democratic voters?
Well, I mean, I think the Democratic voters, as much as some folks may want them to cross over to vote in the Republican primary, I do think Democrat voters are going to vote in the Democrat primary. Mark Carmichael certainly has been around. He's got some folks who know him over the years and has some name ID there. But neither of them really raised, I would say, the money to be competitive in a primary. So I think that's going to go back to more of a ground game and who knows them, who has relationships with them, and how effective they are at that level.
Mario, which of those two candidates pose the bigger threat to Banks?
Neither one. Banks has it. He's going to win it in November, and it's not even going to be close. So Democrats shouldn't even waste their money on that race.
There you go. Mario, this next question deals with your neck of the woods. Congresswoman Victoria Spartz faces multiple primary challengers. That's largely because she didn't decide to run again until, the last minute. So how do you rate her chances on this one?
I think that if there's a large turnout on Election Day, she has a good chance of winning. Now, with a low turnout, with Chuck Goodrich spending so much money, he is blanketing the airwaves. If you look in any mailbox, you're getting a mailer from him. He's picking up pace. It's anyone's game at this point. I'm curious to see. It'll all depend on turnout. And if any of these other candidates, the other 5 or 6 candidates that are also running, peel away from Chuck's votes that he needs to beat the incumbent.
Laura, Democrats have 2 choices in this race. Who has the upper hand, Ryan Feniger or Deborah Pickett?
Again, I think on these things, it's going to be really in this primary point. It's going to be who you have the relationships and what that ground game looks like. I mean, primaries really are, I don't want to say hand-to-hand combat, but sometimes they feel like hand-to-hand combat, particularly in getting your people out to vote. So I think that's going to be a very big part of that.
So what's one primary that we haven't maybe talked about that you think we should be paying attention to on Tuesday night? Laura, you first.
Well, I've got 2. I'm going to be following Jefferson Shreve. Definitely. His messaging is deviated from the messaging that he had when he ran for mayor. So I will definitely be following that one because I'm really interested in that and actually personally like Jefferson Shreve. So I'll be interested to see how that one goes. I think another primary, Democrat primary that I'll be watching here in Marion County is the one between John Bartlett and Autumn Carter. That one is a contested primary, and again, in a growing area of the county, and I think that's another one. There's some other legislative ones that I'm keeping an eye on because I think those are going to be really meaningful for us as we head into the fall.
Mario, less than a minute left. Take us home, sir.
So Elena Schonkweiler versus Laura Allerding to replace Chuck Goodrich. You have Elena, who's being backed by a lot of the mayors and the commissioners, versus Laura Allerding, who's supported by Diego Morales and some of the more hardcore conservative people. That's going to be an interesting race. And then finally, Hunter Smith versus Bill Guthridge. I'm curious to see if the Colts punter Hunter Smith can pull it out, or will Bill Guthridge, who has got a big base in Westfield and in Carmel, ends up winning the day.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, right? We'll definitely talk about it, keep an eye on it. Good to see you both. As always, we'll talk to you soon. Thank you very much, and we will be right back after the break. Thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics this week. We'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30, and be sure to tune in at 11 o'clock for The Hills Sunday with Chris Steyerwalt. Good show. Also, make sure to watch Wish TV this Tuesday night. We'll have full live coverage of the results of the primaries. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your weekend.